Healthcare innovation is advancing at a breakneck pace, but understanding how to invest with true impact isn't always straightforward. For investors and leaders, especially those looking at global markets, making the right moves requires a depth of insight most never realized they need. In today's episode, we explore the secrets to making these high-stakes decisions count.
If you want to be an investor which has meaning, you cannot ignore.
Imagine trying to drive innovation in one of the most complex sectors without a clear roadmap. That's where Shlomo Noy comes in. With 25 years as the Vice President of Research and Development and founder of the Tech Transfer Office at Sheba Medical Center, ranked among the top 10 hospitals globally, Shlomo has first-hand knowledge of what it takes to align research, finance, and clinical application.
This was the main challenge. Because first, they don't believe you. Second, they think, the hospital has a leverage on me. I am an employee. So if I will argue, they have measures.
In this episode, Shlomo shares insights that could redefine how leaders approach healthcare investment and innovation. Here is what you can expect. We delve into the art of balancing incentives for researchers and ensuring in-house innovation stays competitive. Shlomo reveals the unique strategies that put Israel's tech ecosystem on the global map. And he opens up on the healthcare expansion in China, a market ripe with potential but often misunderstood by Western companies.
So what is the objective? The objective is,
if you are a CEO, politician, or investor, this episode is packed with insights you won't want to miss. So be sure to subscribe, comment, and share this episode. Let's dive in and uncover the keys to making healthcare innovation work on a global scale. Shlomo, it's good to have you on the show. As I looked into your CV in the preparation of the podcast, and it's so impressive what you have done and what you have accomplished in your business career. Maybe we can start the podcast with you leading through your career. And let me start with the first question. What sparked your interest in pursuing a career in healthcare?
Thank you, Christian. First of all, thank you for inviting me to the show, to the podcast. I'm very happy to be here. And as you said, let's start from the beginning. I started to be a medical student when I was 17. I was interested all my childhood, so to speak, in the field of healthcare. And later on, my career went to other direction, but still, the fact that you can, help people either by being a clinician or working biotech and be partner to any development and changing modes of therapy, you have impact on lives of people. That's, I think, my main motto, to have impact on the way people are treated, on the way people are served. I am an MD and MBA. I did it from Fontainebleau in INSEAD, and then I did a PhD. And my career is a little bit clinician, but mainly healthcare manager. And in the last 25 years, I would call myself R&D manager, biotech manager, things like this. And I think that what I learned in life is the most important thing is the interfacing, because if you are only a clinician, you will not be able to materialize the IP, the fact what you did in the lab, or if you are a researcher. My main career is integrating between business investment, how to take it to the public, how to make a device or a drug from it, and interfacing with the basic science or clinical science. That's, I think, what I did in 30 years, interfacing between research and actually development of drugs and devices.
Let me ask you one question. What you said is that you have an education in, on one hand, in medicine, in healthcare, in anything around healthcare, and on the other hand, you pursued also a business, let's call it career, a business education in the world's best institutions, actually. And I read something similar in the biographies of Elon Musk, for example. He said, okay, physics and business management. And his argumentation was, I wanted to study business so that I can become my own boss. And that nobody knows anything more than I do in business and can pull me over. And also Charlie Munger writes in his Poor Charlie's Almanac that he thinks it's necessary to be multidisciplinary in business and in investing. I'm curious to hear your opinion. Why do you believe it's necessary for life science investors not only to stay on the science track, but also become sort of multidisciplinary and look more towards business, more towards investing, and more towards other disciplines? What is your opinion about that?
I think that life science is very different from IT or cyber or any other investment opportunities of venture capital or investors or whatever Elon Musk is doing. I think that life science is different, is very unique in the sense that if you want to invest, to be an investor, which has meaning, you cannot ignore the clinical side. You cannot be a pure banker here because the asymmetric information is so prominent. I think that no one can be an expert in IT, but I think that you can learn it and understand it. But if I come to you and I explain you about a target in immunology, and you are the investor, you will feel a little bit uncomfortable. Or if I'm talking to you about investing in a clinical indication, which is rare, would you go and invest? You need to understand the clinical indication. You need to understand the basic science. No one of us is a basic scientist. If you look at the American Medical Association, there are 74 specialization and subspecialty specialization. So no one can understand 74 or be an expert on 74 disciplines. But you have to understand the vocabulary. You have to understand, because otherwise, being a pure financial investor is very different in life science as opposed to other investment fields. That's my opinion. Yes.
What makes it so different in your opinion?
Asymmetric information.
Is it such a problem?
No, but in this discipline, the asymmetric information between those that are in the field and those that are not is much, much larger than in IT, for example. The gap between one that understands the vocabulary, that understands what to ask, and so on, as an investor, is much more bigger than in any other disciplines, for example, IT. But that's a big difference. And that's why I think that in life science, interfacing, like you quote, interfacing between the financial business side and the clinical side is crucial. That's what I feel after 30 years in field.
So when I understand you right, it's necessary to be really multidisciplinary with the team setup when someone is interested in investing in life science. Is this an understanding that you would agree on?
I think that you put it very accurately, very, very accurately. That's it. You need a multidisciplinary team if you want to deal with biotech investment.
I'm curious to hear your opinion. What are the 5 most important disciplines that you would put on a team?
You're talking about team members.
Team members. For example, your job is to put together a fund and a team, and you have a multidisciplinary approach. What would be the 5 most important disciplines?
If we are talking about biotech and not medtech, which is a little bit different. In biotech specifically, I would go for, of course, basic science, finance, experience in investment and understanding the capital market. There will be IPO, there will be M&A. You have to have some experience in that. You have to have also someone that understands in clinics, in the clinical application, because it goes to clinical stages, hopefully. And you need also someone that understands regulation, highly important, at least the vocabulary. It does not have to be an expert, but he needs to be someone that understands legal/regulation and can ask the regulatory consultant what to do. So these are basically the 5 disciplines I would put in.
You started in your career from the medical side. What was the pivotal moment where you said, okay, it's great that you work in a hospital. I saw in your CV that you have experience with the Sheba Medical Center.
Yeah.
And then decided to become an investor. What was that pivotal moment where you said, okay, I want to do more in that field? I mean, many people are happy when they stay in the medical field. And you said, okay, no, that's not, let's move on. What was this pivotal moment?
First of all, curiosity. Curiosity is something highly, highly important for every one of us to continue in his life and make it as interesting as he can. Because we are preparing, in my opinion, you always prepare the next move. What I did in Sheba I was for 24 years the vice president for R&D and the chairman and founder of the tech transfer company of Sheba, which did very impressive exits, by the way. The last one, if you look, we did, it's a company that I was a chairman and the founder in 2012. It's called Innovalve. Edwards, the large corporate of valve replacement and valve equipment, just purchased it a week ago for 330 million US.
Wow.
And I was the chairman and founder. So basically, I did it in my career at Sheba as the VP for R&D and chairman and founder of tech transfer. Basically, I learned it hands-on. When I started, I had only academic background as an MBA and a PhD in health economics and policy, but I didn't have practice. So I started, I created the institutions. It's highly important for a hospital with 10,000 employees to change the DNA, organizational behavior, and so on. And basically, that's what I did. But the difference is that what I did in 24 years at Sheba or any other university or academic institute that I was in is early stage. Early stage. And what you do is basically licensing agreement. That's what you do. You have to understand what is the potential of the IP, invest in the IP, but then you license it. You are not following the development of it. Someone comes, early stage, takes it out. What I do in the fund is basically very different because I see companies in a more advanced stages. But what I did in Sheba basically prepared me very well to the fund. And then I decided that I need another career after 24 years, and I joined the fund as a partner. They would never take me as a partner, never, if I didn't have the experience at Sheba.
Oh, I believe that, yeah. This is very beneficial for a fund to have someone on board who understands the end-to-end value chain from the patient back to tech transfer. Before we move the discussion to the fund, I have a lot of questions for the fund.
Please.
But let's stay a little bit with tech transfer and Sheba Medical Center. I saw in your CV that you started in 2000 as a VP for Research and Development and founded the tech transfer unit. We are talking about the year 2000. Is this a correct understanding?
Yeah, correct.
Tech transfer in Europe, in my opinion, as a function in an organization is rather young and rather new. So basically, you were one of the first ones who said, okay, that's necessary. But what I'm interested to hear is why did you think it's necessary to have a known tech transfer function in the hospital?
Because basically, basically without terms and conditions which assures the researcher and the clinician their rights, there will be no science and there will be no innovation, because the asset is the IP eventually at this stage. So until 2000, what people did was basically take what they did, went to a venture capital, not to the hospital, and then continue from there. But eventually, they did not make a good return because dilution and another capital round and so on, then they left with nothing. The fact that we did a tech transfer in-house basically made their life easier. And our output but only 10 years after, but these are very long-term processes. We saw the effect of creating the tech transfer company in-house only after 8-10 years, because you have to change the DNA of the staff. Basically, we said to the staff, listen, you don't take a risk. You bring your idea to us in-house. You are in the hospital, in the middle of lunch break, you come, you show your innovation. We help you. We don't have to do it. We have an IP expert in-house. He looks, for example, that there is no prior art. You don't understand, the researcher does not understand the prior art. And there are many databases specializing in this, which are highly expensive. So the hospital purchases it, the hospital helps him, and then he tells me, listen, excellent idea, but here you see, you have so many people that thought about it before. So he leaves it. But if it's good, you go to a patent committee. A patent committee means payment. Means that the hospital takes the risk. Early stage patent can come to 50, 70, 100, depends on what you do. And suddenly the early stage high risk money is paid by the hospital. So he thinks that's good. And now we protect him. We are a big organization. We are a professional organization. We protect him when it comes to the next stages, because we are professional. He continues to be a researcher. He does not have the time or the attention or the knowledge how to deal with the board meeting that decides on capital raise for that valuation or that valuation. He does not. So he got an umbrella that also protects his right. And we created a mechanism whereby when the hospital gets $1, 35 to 40, depends, percent comes to him. So his rights are aligned with us. We invested the money. We took the lawyer to make the licensing agreement. We protect the milestone payment. We protect the IPO. We protect everything. And he gets 35 to 40% of each dollar that the hospital gets. And that's a revolution, because it gives him incentive. It allows him to stay with what he likes, be a clinician or be a researcher, takes care of all the things that he does not understand, capital raise and all that. And basically, by the end of the day, if it's a success story, he is benefiting like all other players. And this has increased the outcome of R&D at the hospital after 10 years, 5-fold, 5x. Outcome measures in IP in exits, in licensing agreement, because they understood that the best way is not running out to the venture capital, but rather stay at the hospital and continue to do what you like while we, the transfer office, are taking care of them. It's a revolution.
I believe that. It's a win-win-win, basically. It's a win for the venture capitalist because you take a lot of work from their table. It's a win for the researcher, and it's a win for the hospital. And it sounds to me like it's a tech transfer plus, it's tech transfer plus incubation program that you installed, at the Sheba Medical Center. I'm curious, I had some episodes and some experience myself with tech transfer, and in Europe I experienced a variety of deal terms when it comes to out-licensing technology from a research organization, a hospital or research organization or university into the first corporate shell. On the one end, the most extreme that I experienced was 90% equity goes to the owner of the patent. On the other hand, on the other side was the model of CERN in Switzerland, which said 2% royalty. When 2% royalty for licensing the technology, not exclusive, it's non-exclusive. So it's just part of, not the patent, but just part of the technology as initial step. And then they upgrade the license when the team moves forward and acquires capital and wants more protection.
In my opinion, in the majority of cases, tech transfer of office in a university or hospital cannot be an equity player. There are cases like Innoval, which I mentioned to you, whereby we were an equity player. But usually, it is changing, by the way. In the last 3-5 years, more and more research institutions are trying to play on the equity level. But in general, I would say that you out-license it in a royalties manner that does not being influenced by any capital raised in the future. And you as a tech transfer need the majority of flexibility that you want to go out whenever you can. So you have a royalties agreement, but you have also a net present value model that if someone, let's say that now you are in phase 2, you can go out without taking the risk of phase 3 fail or not. And there is something that is calculating the net present value, and then you can go out with less money, but some money. You have to be flexible. There should be milestone payment that you see cash. You need to see cash. Mainly, you need to see cash in order to self-sustain the R&D unit. The money that will come in will be served to finance future patents that you want to do. It's a closed circle. So a milestone payment, you finish the preclinical part, you get 300,000, whatever you agree. You have an IND approval, another 600, whatever. So you need to have milestone, because waiting for the royalties in 10 years now sales, it's quite frustrating. So you make royalties, you make payment of sub-licensing, you make payment of milestones, preclinical, IND, what have you. You make a definition of exit. For example, if you go IPO after phase 1, the hospital gets a significant amount of money. That's if you play on the royalties game. If you want to play on the equity, then you need to understand that in your office there's someone experienced that can play in the board of when you are an equity player, meaning understands capital market, understand valuation, understand what does it mean in terms of the hospital rights and value and so on. So I would say that the basic idea of tech transfer is to signal to the researcher there's a change now. If you have good innovation, you will benefit. You can do your research. Some of the money, by the way, some of the other 60% on top and above the 40 that he gets are going to his lab. So he gets personal, but also lab money. So
Makes sense.
the signal is you will be able to do whatever you like. You don't have to go out. Everything is here in the campus. You'll get personal money, you get lab money. And this will, first of all, stimulate significantly all the research in the hospital or the university to be more applicable than theoretical. And then, if you have the first layer, the first basic layer of more research, the second layer of devices or drugs will come out of it. So that's what I would do.
I totally agree. I totally agree. My core expertise is in business, and especially what you said about equity. I think the equity side in private companies, especially in deep tech and biotech companies, should be reserved for people who actually invest capital into the company and are committed for at least a 5 to 10 year story,
Yeah.
and have also the capability and the network to invest more in the company if necessary, to participate in follow-on rounds. And I always have a very unpleasant feeling in my stomach and in my belly when someone suggests a high equity stake for a patent. I say, okay, this is more for the people who invest capital. And I also agree to what you say that tech transfer offices should rather go on milestone payments and royalties. Milestone payments practically signal also from the VC side that they are serious and that they are willing to pay and they value the institution and they value the research. And I think the third part is still also, I know that researchers don't like this term, but it's from the business side, service fees. So when researchers participate with the lab in further research, in further development work, of course, they should be paid at a good cost level and should not donate the work for free to the company.
Not at all. And I agree with you. I highly not recommend to go on the model of 90% equity to the researcher.
This was the most extreme. This was the most extreme case
but
experience.
Not 70 and not 60. And no, it's in my opinion, in my experience, this is not the right move to do.
Yeah, I think it also, it makes venture capitalists walk away from the deal silently. Just don't look at it any further, except an institution that has a fund. When they come on board and say, okay, look, I invest 500,000 or 1 million with my fund, it's a different game. But just for a patent, I would not do it. When we stay at your role at Tech Transfer, what was your biggest challenge when you started the tech transfer unit that you had to solve?
The biggest challenge was the DNA of the researcher and clinician at the campus. It's very hard. Doctors are conservative, and it's good that they are. And they were used to 20 years of doing innovation in a very different way, of going out of the hospital. But rather changing the DNA, changing the atmosphere, the organizational behavior of the hospital, this was the main challenge. Because first, they don't believe you. Second, they think, aha, the hospital has a leverage on me. I am an employee. So if I will argue, they have measures to force me. So I'd rather be out, not in their capacity, so to speak, in a bad word, to leverage on me. Let me put some of the eggs outside the campus. Why should I put all eggs in the campus? And things like this, the way of thinking like this was the major challenge to change the behavior in the campus, inside the campus. And I think that after a few years, all of them were convinced that this is the best way and the maximizing way for them and for their research in the lab as well.
So you experienced a lot of headwind from the researchers at the beginning of your journey in the tech transfer field, and invested, I assume, a lot of time in negotiations. And I think this is something business leaders very often face, that the initial reaction is rejection. And people don't see the value. And my question to you is, how do you tackle such a situation? What's your tactic to motivate people and convince people to join forces with you? What's your negotiation secret?
I think that there are two elements. First element is case studies. Everyone knows Professor X. We had a company that did a very nice investment in collagen treatment of reflux in the esophagus. A very famous company did an exit. The inventor, everyone was, it was in the paper. So everyone was calling him to congratulate him. And he told like 20 people, me, between them, listen, it's not a big deal. After all the capital rounds, from the exit, I have 0.000, whatever, 2%, which means I have nothing, because they diluted and diluted and diluted me. And everyone was thinking, hey, this professor is now a rich guy. Look at their exit. No. And if you come to your faculty in the hospital and tell them, listen, you all know Professor X. Look at the story. He had a huge investment. The company was called Colbar, Collagen Bar. And look what happened. If you come with us, for sure, you will get more to you and to the lab. So this was the first element, case studies that showed that the grass outside the campus is not that green. And the second thing was talking to their comfort and rationale. And basically also, one important thing is that I, as a doctor, understand the doctors. And 90% of us are risk averse, very risk averse, very conservative. As you said in the beginning, why moving from the medical field to another field? This is another illustration of the conservatism and of not taking risk. And you come to them and you said, listen, you are risk-free. There's innovation, you are risk-free. In-house makes the first screening for you, no payment. You go to a patent attorney in the city and ask to see whether there are prior art. It will cost you 15,000 euro, 10,000, whatever. So you're risk-free. We took the prior art. We invest in the patents once we think it's good. We take care of legals. All these 100,000 all in all, with legals, 80, 70, what have you, are high-risk money. You don't know what will come out of it. We take the risk. You, Mr. Doctor, you are risk-free. And if there is success, you are part of the success. So this tactic of approaching their DNA of risk averse was very successful.
I understand you correctly. The tech transfer unit of the Sheba Medical Center, when you installed it, took over the entire risk of these initial investments, which basically is patent fees.
Yes.
and also provided, I think, support for the researcher in the basic research. So they paid for the lab, they paid for the employees, and gave a lot of support from the initial ideation phase up to patents. And in the deal terms, you give 40% of everything that comes into the Sheba Medical Center, 40% to the
35. 35 the majority. Yeah,
30,
never mind.
35. Okay, 35% to the inventor, and 60% you said to the lab. Did I hear that right?
No, okay. Part of the 60 goes to the
okay,
lab.
okay.
Because a majority of the part goes to the R&D, which is a closed circle. There is no dividends, there is no money taken home by the hospital. But whatever comes, the other 60 is part of it to the lab of the investor, or of the inventor, the researcher, but part goes to the R&D. Because with this part that goes to the R&D unit, to the tech transfer, basically, I will be able to finance the next patent that will show up in 6 months or whatever. So by the way, if the tech transfer is a failure and does not have exits, eventually after a few years, it will be closed because it will not have money to invest in the future patent. But here, when the money comes, some of it stays with the tech transfer and finance the next move.
Yeah, it's also a motivation then for the tech transfer team to be profitable and to negotiate profitable terms and not fully rely on the hospital. So to really start, start turning the wheel, and then you invent it in a way and keep it going in a way that cash flows in, goes back into research, they produce new patents, you put the new ideas out on the market, fund it with venture capital, which creates the next round of returns. And at the end of the day, hopefully in 10 to 15 years, then you have a few big hits and they create bigger returns for everyone involved in the process.
Exactly so.
That makes a whole lot of sense. Yeah. The Sheba Medical Center is in Israel.
Yes.
And up until a few years ago, at the beginning of the pandemic, I always thought Israel is very good in research, of course, but not much better than the European regions, like in the United Kingdom, like in Switzerland, like in Austria, like in Germany, and all the other beautiful countries we have here. But a conversation on my podcast 4 years ago convinced me that it's different, that Israel is so far ahead than Europe and more comparable to Silicon Valley. And she said there is this name Silicon Valley that some people refer to special areas in Israel and say, okay, it's as innovative as Silicon Valley.
Right.
And I had some Israelis on my podcast in the last years, and they all confirmed the same. It's really a good breeding ground for innovation. And my question to you is, why is that? What is the secret sauce of Israel? Why has Israel pushed so far ahead in Europe?
I think, first of all, just to illustrate it, last week there was a deal of a cyber company called Wiz, W-I-Z, 23 billion US dollars sold to Google.
And this was also Israeli?
Yeah.
Really? I didn't know that.
Last week. W-I-Z. 23 billion.
Wow. Wow.
I cannot even count it.
Yeah, we need more such success stories.
Yeah. So I think that, as you said, what is the secret sauce? I think that first of all, Israel invested a lot of energy and time and attention to research. Even in the 50s, where we were a poor country, we understood that we don't have oil, we don't have minerals, we don't have anything, we don't have gas. Our natural resource is the head. That's the only gas that we have, our heads. So we invested a lot of money in excellent academic institutions. Second, I think that the DNA of Israeli is very entrepreneurship. We like to be entrepreneurs. We like to move. We like to go 2 years to the States, come back, go back to Europe. We like to move. We don't stay. We are, in a way, we are in unrest. Unrest has some positive implications, like forcing you to do things. I think that's the second thing. I think that also people ignore it, but we had a blessing in the beginning of the 90s, in 91 and 92. Israel was something like 5 million, 5.5, and 1.2 came with the Russian immigration. After Yeltsin and the change in 89 and 90, 1.2 Jews came from Russia to Israel. Big change. Because what happened in Russia, because they didn't have money, was excellent education in basic science, in medicine, physics, chemistry, but no laboratories, no money for equipment, no money for that. So excellent theoretical experience. These guys were amazing, amazing. And they came to Israel and the government didn't know what to do. Okay, you need to do something with 1 million immigrants to a society which is 5.5. So it's like, almost 20% newcomers. What do you do? And in my opinion, the game changer was the incubation system that started in 95 and 97. The government created 28 incubators for biotech, medtech, IT, even food tech. Think about food tech.
Really?
97, when no one thinks about this.
Already, we are talking about 95, 96, 97. So it was
incubator system. So basically what the government did was creating the envelope, investing in a core envelope. We call it in Hebrew envelope, which is basically a financial guy, an accounting guy, a marketing guy, a logistic guy, which is the core team. And around them, between 15 to 20 early stage, 2 people, 3 people, projects, even not companies, projects. Now, they get all this knowledge, which they don't have, from this core team, and they have 2 years in the incubator. And after 2 years, we call it the Death Valley, because many of them cannot go to the next step, which is raising money and staying alive. And that's why it's called the Death Valley. But if you showed something in 2 years, you'll get finance and you'll move on. Incubation system, 28 incubators, which is something like 300, 400 projects all over Israel, change. And it's still the engine of the economy until now. And this was a game changer. No one talked about this. No one thinking about incubation in 97. Now the whole world is doing incubator now.
When I always thought one of the first incubation programs in the world was Y Combinator. I think it started in 2003 or 2002. And Israel started already about, let's say 10 years, 10 years, 8 years earlier. Where did this inspiration come from?
I think there was a pressure that came bottom up. Lots of engineers, lots of IT guys, lots of chemists, physics, with no work, with nothing to do. And the government said, wisely, smartly, they said, anyway, I will need to feed them, so to speak, in the next 5 years until they change. So let's give them money that helps their immigration and absorption, but let's tunnel them to what they know, physics, chemistry, medicine, and so on. Because anyway, I will have to spend the money, because I will not let them die in the street or state. We are a solidarity society. We don't have homelessness. So this was the genius. I mean, it was a pressure from bottom up. What do we do? And they said, listen, let's take the money. And instead of giving them an allocation, every month come to the Social Security, get, I don't know, 1,000 euro. I'll put the 1,000 euro alternatively in this incubator system. And this, I think, this was the changing point of Israel economy. Until 97 and until 99 and 2000, the GDP here per person was one of the lowest in the world. One of the lowest in the world. There was nothing here.
I mean, Israel is one of the big role models, like Singapore, for example. I mean, no natural resources, but this incubation idea, I think this is genius. This was genius. I totally agree to that. And I'm a huge fan of meritocratic systems where you say, okay, look, I mean, instead giving you money for doing basically nothing or getting drunk all day long and sitting home and watching television, here you have some money. You come back in 2 years, if I understood you correctly. And if you show me something of value, you get $1 million. And then you come back in 2 years, and if you show me something of value, then I give you 10 million. It's a very smart move.
I'm not sure that about the number.
Just making it up to exemplify.
If you show something of value, yes, you'll get funded. If not, you move forward. That's life. C'est la vie.
When, I mean, we have a lot of players, and we talked a little bit about governments now. We have the VCs, we have the tech transfer offices, we have, of course, the researchers. Without people like the researchers, nothing would work anyways in its system. When governments would come to you, let's say, like, for example, European Union, and say, okay, what is your advice to us? How should we deal with the researchers? What would the advice be that you give them?
Researchers in general are very hard to manage because they are, and rightfully so, and it's good because researchers in general are free spirits. For example, we never thought or we never forced anyone to do research on whatever he likes. If he has grants, he can research whatever he likes, even if it's not applicable. They are free spirits. So the main idea about them is a system of incentive and balances. Because why do I mention balance? Because on the other hand, you don't want them to live what they are best in and starting to allocate 100% of their time into the new venture, which they are active and it's their baby, so to speak. No, we need professionals to do it. We need your advice on this, but please keep on what you are good at, research. And the balances and the incentives, this is the main issue. If you create an incentive and balances to the researcher, that's the first step. Second step is to create an envelope, so to speak, that basically makes his life easier. You are taking care of all the things that he does not like: patent, legal, finance, capital raise, so on and so forth. To make his life comfortable, but still he is a partner. He will get money when it comes to a success. And thirdly, you convince him that together with him and the institution, the integration is the best optimal move. Because when you will come and the venture capital will start play, you don't know the rules of the game. You will end up with 0.00002. With us, as a big organization, professional organization, you are protected. So I would say that this is, and another highly important thing, is some government money, which is high-risk money for early stages. Encourage the early stages. Give even a small subsidiary, not big money, give every year, make a competition in the hospital of 5 to 10 grants of 15,000 euro, which you get for everything. It's easy. You don't have to fill a paper. One pager competition, you get 15,000 for early stage. And this also, in a way, basically stimulate the wheels.
When I look at Europe, the Mediterranean Sea, also the regions around the Mediterranean Sea, a lot has evolved in the last decades in the early stages. So early stage funding, early stage grants. Mm-hmm. And from my experience, which is now 18 years in life science, whenever I look at the later stages, Series A, Series B, Series C, I perceive that this region, if we talk about Europe, down from the United Kingdom, from Scandinavia, Israel, and also Northern Africa, is very good at the early stages in funding, but terrible at the late stages. So there is a lack of venture capital, in my opinion. And as a result, like this, for example, you mentioned it sold to Google for 23 billion. It's good, but Google is an American company and the companies go to the United States.
And it is cyber. And it's cyber.
And it is cybersecurity. It's a defense tech, which usually is not. It's very interesting to see that going to another nation. But I think the reason for that is there is no funding in Europe for that. And also when you look at Southeast Asia and China, they're also very attractive because they have later stage funding. My question to you is this just my picture, or did you make similar experiences when we talk about funding, or do you think we have enough funding in Europe in all stages? It's just the companies are not good enough to get funding.
I think that Europe is undergoing a significant major change in the last 15 years. I think that smartly, wisely, Horizon program, are excellent stimulation to European companies. I mean, I attend for deal flow to my fund. I attend Bio Europe and bioequity. I just was in San Sebastian and in Barcelona for the bioequity and the bio Europe. And I can see the change in the last 15 years. Horizon made it a huge, excellent environment. You come to Bio Europe and you see hundreds of companies, which was not the case earlier. So you see lots of companies, you see lots of professional things. I think this is excellent. Now, talking about private money, it's different. But also if you look at the last 10 years, there are giants in venture capital in Europe, which was not the case before in France, in the Netherlands, in Scandinavia. Big change. You see Nasdaq Nordic in Stockholm. Okay, it will go up because the traffic is not that much, but it's a big change to have Nasdaq in Stockholm. And all this shows that here we come to the data. In 2023, it was the first year that you had more startups in Europe than in the US.
Really?
It was never before. 23 was the first year with more startups in Europe than in the US. And this illustrates the big change. Government in Europe, in my opinion, should be a player because early stage, high risk money is always government role. And by the way, even the American, which are not so much, socialist and are all the time saying less government, even then they have excellent program, federal program for early stage. So I think that Europe is moving in the right direction, much more money, much more venture capital, as opposed to, and many more biotech and medtech startup, much more than earlier. You go to all these forums and you see excellent company, high quality company, big change.
What's the challenge that we should focus on now in the coming 5 years to improve the situation even further?
In Europe, I
Yeah.
think the challenge for Europe is take advantage of the EU. Now, the EU has a big advantage in regulation. EMA is a very smart move that was done 25 years ago or so. It's excellent. But I think that it should be more European. And you also see it now. I met few companies in bioequity, and it's starting to be, and that's the challenge, how to integrate a Spanish company with a French company and with a Swiss company. So I can do multi-sites in 5 countries of the EU and submit all the 5 countries, all the 5 sites to EMA. So I think that if Europe can go further and not be a Spanish company only or a Swiss company only, but integrated, this will make it the US, because then recruitment of patients, recruitment of resources. This guy in Switzerland, and they start to do it. This guy in Switzerland is excellent in discipline A, and the other guy in France is in. And so, if you can integrate it, I think that's a big challenge. Now that the money is central, the regulation is central, and if the companies will be starting to be European in the sense of multi-countries, and it's already started, in my opinion, that's a big challenge.
Yeah, no, good points. I totally agree. We have to think European as a continent to be able to compete on a global scale with the United States and also with Southeast Asia, which is majority is China, basically. But later to that, when we talk about your fund, before we dive into your fund, let's talk a little bit about drug development and biotech. So my background in biotech and drug development is dating back to Genentech, what I've read. The first biotech company, in my opinion, that was financed within a modern model with venture capitalists providing the seed funding in a staged approach, first 100,000, then a few million, grew it to an IPO, and later, I think, integrated into Roche. And this laid the groundwork for the whole sector.
Mm-hmm.
I started in life science biotech with a Novartis spin-out in 2006. It was the department of Rutger Novak who later founded CRISPR Therapeutics with Emmanuel Charpentier. And we got financed with venture capital money, 40 million euros in 2006, which was very unique from that size in that day and age, because there were not so much funds. And I think Europe was mostly empty except Switzerland. The first business plan that I calculated had the number, we need 1 billion to bring a drug to the market. So we calculated it from the beginning. It was a little bit late preclinical development up to how much money would we need to get it approved by the EMA or FDA in the United States. The latest number that I heard before the pandemic was around 3 billion. In the pandemic, the number grew to 4 to 5 billion. So the cost explode over the years. And my question to you now is, in your opinion, these days, in 2024, in the coming years, what are the biggest challenges that you see in drug development and therapeutics that we need to tackle?
I think that one major change happening now, still, we have to see if it will be validated and be practical as they claim. And this is all the drug discovery platforms. If the companies that are now in the market and the others in the pipeline, which basically claim that they can do the selection process of, so to speak, blockbuster drug in the future much more efficiently than before, especially because of databases and AI, and to predict that compound number 63 will be the winner, as opposed to what we do now. We take all of them, we do in vitro, then we do animals, preclinical, we go to phase 1 and all that. They claim that they will be able to do this selection process much more efficient. Yet, remains to be seen. But if the claim is right, this will be a significant change in the industry. It will lower significantly the development prices, the development cost of a drug until it reaches the market of 2 billion or what have you. This will reduce it significantly. I think this is one of the future trends that that his industry has to, pay attention to it and to see if it works. I've seen few of them in the last 2 years. Some of them are impressive, and it will be interesting to see what is the future of this platform, of this drug discovery and better selection. I think this is one thing that is highly important. I think the other thing is that I think that recruitment of patients will become challenging much more than now. I see a challenge, for example, now in the States, post-corona, it's harder and harder to recruit patients because the staff in the hospital don't have the attention, don't have the willingness and the passion to do it. In Europe, so I understand it's less of a problem, but recruitment in general becomes an issue.
Why is that an issue?
Huh?
Why is recruitment such an issue?
Because, first of all, I think it's the sociology of the patient. Many of them don't like to be involved in study unless you are a very severe patient in oncology and you understand that this is your only chance. But if you are, I don't know, diabetic or coronary disease or something like that, not necessarily you want to be recruited. Staff is less paid for it. Staff has less attention to it because they want to do the job and go home. And many companies will tell you that recruitment became an issue in North America. And there's also all this social media, especially after the vaccination. The people are influenced by social media, which stating, don't be a guinea pig. Say no to guinea pig, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
It's basically about psychology and sociology of the patient, but it's there.
Yeah, that's probably a point. So you were talking at the beginning when we go back a little bit about artificial intelligence in drug discovery.
Yeah.
So that the basic idea is invent molecules, just simplify the basic idea, invent molecules with artificial intelligence, throw them on the targets and simulate the outcome of preclinical studies, and we take the best molecules and progress them through the clinics, and we increase the success rate. So this is the basic understanding.
Yes.
Much cheaper, much faster, better, improves the process, cuts out cost. But let me be a critical friend. My counter argument always is to say, yeah, but preclinical development is basically cheap. It's not the most cost intense area of the development. It's more in the clinics. And of course, when you improve the molecule and you have a better outcome or have chance for a better outcome. But the thing is, all this artificial intelligence, as far as I understand this, needs existing data. So basically, you work with existing targets and they can't make up targets. My question to you, with your medical background, is what about the disease and the biology? Do we understand the progression of diseases well enough yet? Or do we also have problems on this side? To me, it always feels okay. I mean, when you don't understand the progression of disease and you don't have a whole lot of data around that, and throw new molecules on existing targets, probably you don't change anything. I mean, you just do repeat with different molecules the same mistakes. What about the data and the biology? Is there also something that we can improve that would improve the outcome overall?
I think that you are very right. And that's why I said in the beginning, there's a lot of potential, but there's also lots of skepticism and questions like those that you raised about the validation, about will it really work, or is it like any other buzz that we have? I mean, we can talk now for hours about digital medicine. 5, 6 years ago, you would say digital medicine, it was a piece of cake to raise money as an investor. Now you will say digital medicine, digital health, very, very, very few will invest in digital health. So in medicine also, we have our fashion and friends and AI is now, the buzz. But I think, yes, this is of course an interesting question, and especially in oncology, we really don't understand fully the diseases. We don't understand the gaps. We are understanding better and better, but still, the more you understand, and here comes new targets. I don't know, TPVR2, you didn't think about this, here it comes. It's dynamic. It's very changing. I don't think that in the next 5 years, someone will be able to match the database on the AI side and drug selection with the mechanism of biology. It will
you don't think so?
No, it will take more time to do an optimal matching. You will still, as you said, waste time and efforts on things you know or things you didn't find until now. It's a continuous effort. If it will work, then biology will be changed as well. But it's a good question. I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting phenomena. I hope it will work because it will bring to the market many more drugs than today, because the barrier will be lowered. But I don't know.
Which means at the end of the day that there is still opportunity in drug development for investors. So it's not everything is solved in that area. So we have still a lot of technology and a lot of open questions to work on. And we are not in this. I mean, one interpretation would also be, okay, the cost go up because we have all possible drugs already on the market, the best version of them, and anything that comes now is worse. So there is still enough room for potential.
There's a lot of room for potential. And that's why the industry, by the way, in numbers, is growing. Mm. The industry is growing annually. Even with the pandemic, more and more is invested in. Although you see, for example, in the IPO market, in publicly traded companies, you see this roller, this roller scale that here it comes, and here for 9 months there's no investment, no IPO, and suddenly boom, and suddenly again. But if you look at the graph over the years, more money is invested in biotech and medtech, in life science, all in all. So there's opportunity. Otherwise, there wouldn't come more money.
Mm-hmm. So this is good for investors, basically. Right. Let me ask you 2 questions before we move to China and your fund. Yeah. The first question is about mistakes for biotech entrepreneurs. I think biotech entrepreneurs have the downside that they come out of the scientific world, are pushed into entrepreneurship with zero education and have to learn everything from scratch. To make their journey a bit easier, my question to you is, what are the 3 biggest mistakes that you saw in the biotech field that new entrepreneurs should avoid to accelerate their development speed?
I think that the first mistake is not knowing your limitation. I'm a good researcher, but I'm not. There are few which are also excellent managers, but the majority are excellent researchers and not so much excellent managers. So the first thing is not to know my mistakes and to think that I can do everything. No, you cannot do everything. You do what you are very good at. The second thing is not to do mistakes in the early stages of structuring the company. You have to structure it very carefully vis-a-vis, for example, taxes, highly important, vis-a-vis team members, part-time, not part-time, who is contributing, how do you benefit him, and so on. The structure and incentives is highly important. And the third one is, of course, the people you choose, the people themselves. Choose good people. Don't do mistakes.
Yeah, that's true.
No, less mistakes. So I think this is the three main elements highly important for a new entrepreneur.
That's true. I couldn't agree more. And connected to this question is that in the last 18 years, I perceived two approaches in the biotech industry. So one is very technology centric. It's a team who says, okay, we have a technology, we advance it no matter what, and full force ahead, it will work at the end of the day. Exaggerated, of course. And the second one is coming more from the market side. Say, okay, we understand the market, we understand the patient, we understand the biology. We put together a world-class team to tackle a problem on the market. And then we license any technology we can find and just move it forward. And we are much better in selecting that. In your opinion, with your experience in tech transfer, in investing in the medical field, what are the advantages and disadvantages of these two approaches?
I think that, like any other elements of life, is what we call dose dependent. If you do overdose of one of the two poles that you mentioned, you'll have all the side effects in the world. Taking analogy from the medical field, I think it should be dose related. Don't take it here overdose, don't take it here overdose. Technology is highly important in the first stages, but a very, very early stage, you have to see the match with the business side. And that's where we started the conversation today of multidisciplinary, of interfacing between the technology and the business. You have to start, and it's milestone related. In the beginning, you have to focus on the technology. But very soon, you have to see the match with business. And if there's no match, don't hesitate. Drop it. Drop it. But if there's a match, then start to do both dosages on the business and technology, integrating them together. But if there's no match, you should think about, even, which I recommend to young people which come to me, sometimes leave it. You will waste your time and energy and money in the next 2 to 3 years and come to the point as of today. So I think that it's, step related, and it's matching related between the two poles.
Charlie Munger, in his book, Poor Charlie's Almanac, which is a collection of his speeches, said that the problem in business very often is social proof, that people seek people who are like they are themselves. So it's pretty much the same. And this point in his speech made me think about what I saw very often in life science and biotech, that basically researchers tend to hire researchers. Whereas when I repeat what you said before, they should start thinking multidisciplinary. and they say, okay, let's match the technology with the business side and let's find someone from the business side. My question to you is, how can they overcome this hurdle? I mean, it means basically for them stepping out of their comfort zone and starting to look for people who are not like they are. What's your advice to a CEO of a biotech, former researcher who says, okay, I want to go on the journey. How should I do that?
It's a real challenge. It's a real challenge. I think that there is a pre-selection, a Darwinism, so to speak, of this CEO. I think that those that cannot integrate with others' discipline will eventually not start with being a CEO. It's like Darwinism. I think that those that will say, listen, I am entrepreneur, I'm a CEO, I'm taking it all the way, they have a different DNA. They will be more open to integrate with other people which are not researchers. And I think that these are people that can be convinced. And eventually, if they are, if they are open enough, they see after very short time that they are not able to move forward. They are not able to move forward without the help of discipline X or Y. And I think this is the major force. The fact that they face the wall and cannot move. If they hit the wall, unfortunately, there will be no company. But if they hit the wall and understand that this is the best lesson, then they will be open to other disciplines.
Can you, from your experience with tech transfer, do you think it's possible to change the DNA? I mean, that someone who is closed up to other discipline and says, okay, I want to stay in my field, to just flip them to the other side and say, okay, now you're multidisciplinary. Is that possible to change the psychology?
My experience is that with the right incentives, the right balances, and the vision and the dream, it is possible. It is possible to change. I mean, he will not be another man, but in this regard, it can be changed. Yes, that's my experience.
But this means actually to teach people to start embracing different disciplines outside basic research.
Many of them at this stage of their life are ready and open to accept other disciplines. They are not, blinded. They understand life usually when they are at this stage.
So age is basically an advantage.
To a certain degree. There's a moment that it becomes disadvantage.
I can't that now use as a hook point to go to China, because how should I connect? China is an old country. Yeah. So I think it's one of the oldest cultural regions in the world. Wow. Pretty much similar to Israel, if I just think about it. Israel is also a very, very long tradition and long history. Wow. I think you can also trace it back for 5,000 years. When we look at China now, my question to you is the first question. Why is China a big, significant opportunity for European biotech companies, in your opinion?
I think for two main reasons. If you look at one parameter, highly important in my opinion, and that's the healthcare expenditures as part of the GDP, you see that the US is the big market. I'm talking about the bigger market. The US is something like 18, 19% out of GDP. It's insane. It cannot grow anymore. And doesn't matter who will be the president to come, he will have to cut healthcare expenditure as part of the GDP. Otherwise, there will be no economy. Europe is Europe, but it's not growing. It's not growing. It is in the same numbers for many years. China, on the other hand, is allocating only 5.2% of GDP to healthcare expenditure. This is a very low number, very low number that the central government declared healthcare services as part of the three main objectives of the country. So what is the objective? The objective is the average of the OECD countries. The average of the OECD country is around 9%, 9.1, and so on. Healthcare expenditure is part of it. Now, if you think about moving in the next 5, 7, 8 years from 5% to 9%, it's trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars.
That's true.
That's a big market. It's not, I don't know, it's not Israel, 10 million people. It's a big market. It's a big market, ready for innovation and changing dramatically. I'll give you another number. In China, there's NHS, National Health System, like in Europe, in many countries, which is fairly good. It covers hospital, it covers medication, it's good. User charges and so on. But there's middle class of 400 million, 350 or 400 middle class, which have a second layer of private health insurance. Now, if you think about this, it's 400 million, which is larger than the whole population of you, but with a second layer of private health insurance. This is a big market. And I can afford new technologies because the second layer is for new technology, mainly. Because the first layer covers if I have, I don't know, pneumonia. So this is again on the market side. And that's why you should go to China and do clinical activities in China, because then you can go and get an NMPA, the Chinese FDA approval, and you can be a player. And I think that any big pharma cannot ignore the Chinese market if they want to grow, because US will not grow. I think that's my estimation. And Europe is cutting wherever they can and managing it smartly. They manage it very smartly. And they do cost containment, which is wise. So I think that it's highly important to go to China. Another issue, which we talked earlier, is the recruitment. The structure of the healthcare services in China is very favorable for clinical trials, in the sense that there is no community services, as opposed to Israel or to Germany or something, where you have good community services, Krankenkasse, family physician, and all that. In China, only 6 or 7% out of the doctors are family physicians. So everything is hospital-oriented. That's the structure. You have a flu, you go to the ER, and you stay there for many hours because you have a flu. But if you talk about recruitment, the structure is ophthalmology hospital, women and children hospital, and so on and so forth. So it's very concentrated, hospital-oriented. And also, not only acute care, outpatient visits, recruitment of patients. Every big third level hospital has a huge catchment area of millions of population. And the numbers are significant. There are thousands of outpatient visits daily in this third level hospital. And many of them are highly educated, top top board certified from Ivy League hospitals in the States coming back to China because of incentives. So the system is favorable for clinical trials. And if you take an example, okay, you need now 100 patients for phase 2 study, okay? You can do 35, because if you do more than 30, 35%, FDA will not acknowledge it. But if you do 30, 35 in China and 65 in the US or Europe, eventually they aggregate 100 patients. You can submit to 2 regulatory agencies in parallel. Big advantage. Because then you create value, which is unbelievable. With the same study, you can submit to 2 regulatory agencies. This is the asset. This is your asset. The data, the value creation, and the ability to submit to 2 regulatory agencies in parallel on the same protocol. And this is why I think European companies should go to China.
Is this did I understand the last point right, that the data generated in China in clinical trials are fully accepted in Europe and the United States?
Yeah, it depends on the hospital. It depends on the hospital and on the PI, but yes, it is. It is.
So basically, doing a phase 1 or 2 study, so the first phase 2 study or the phase 1 study, you can pretty much take the data from any Chinese study center when it's accepted in your condition, and also address the FDA and the EMA when you get efficacy and safety data out of these studies, and they will use this data and not demand automatically, okay, it's not data from the United States or from Europe, so you have to redo the study in our region.
No, as long, now I'm talking about a very general cutoff point, but usually it should not be more than 30% Asian origin patient. It cannot be, 60% Chinese and 40% American. It should be up to 30%, and then the FDA will acknowledge it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the thing is, especially in rare diseases, I mean, you mentioned that in China, you have these huge sites, you have these huge hospitals and these huge regions where the chances and the probability of finding enough patients for the study are just higher than in Europe. Europe is very fragmented. China has, I mean, it was 2014, it was a trip to China to the Shaolin Temple, and we did some sightseeing, and someone asked the bus driver if he can name all cities with more than 1 million inhabitants in China, and he started laughing. And then we asked, why do you laugh? And he said, there are just too many cities. So let's talk about those with more than 15 million inhabitants. I can name that, but the 1 million cities, and for Europe, a city with more than 1 million inhabitants is huge. For China, it's normal.
Exactly. For example, the Women and Children Hospital in Guangzhou, where we work, has something like 20,000 outpatient visits a day. Wow. Now, the majority of them are pregnancy monitoring, which is semi-automatic process, blood pressure, but still, this is the numbers. Oncology hospital, ophthalmology hospital, huge numbers. The ophthalmology hospital in Guangzhou makes between 60 to 70,000 cataract operations yearly. In one floor, there are floors for retina, floors for cornea, cataract research, and so on. Yes, it's huge numbers, and it's very efficient, by the way. And that's what I mean by structure. If you want to do a study in Europe, some of the patients according to the structure, will never reach the hospital because it is solved at the community level.
Yeah.
Here, the system is different. There is almost no community service. Everything is hospital.
And they are very modern. The logistics is just solved. This is high tech, a lot of digital in the hospitals. Already 10 years ago. Now it must be even more advanced. So when I sum it up, what you said in the last minutes is one advantage in China is that the government has in the current 5-year plan that they want to double the healthcare expenses, basically from around 5% to roughly 9%, which is roughly doubling. I know it's not 100% correct, but there is a lot of more money flowing into the system from the government.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you pointed out that also the new Chinese middle class that's developed in the last 30 years have almost all private insurance, which is another layer, which puts also more capital into healthcare, which is very attractive for every company in the world to address this market because it's two forces playing in the same direction, which then in the future will have a huge need for better therapies, for better digital health solutions, for better medical devices, and they can pay for it. On the other hand, you mentioned that one advantage for biotech companies are these huge study sites, these huge regions that are well organized, that see a lot of patients. You mentioned that, for example, in women's health and in labor, you mentioned your hospital that you work with 20,000 visits per day. These are 20,000 per day potential patients that show up and could be addressed for participating in clinical trials.
Yeah. That's the advantage. And of course, also clinical trials, the same protocol, will be cheaper in China. As a rule of the thumb, we estimate that the complete CRF will be less with 35% than the cost in the US for the same protocol.
35% less. Why?
Because of labor cost and because of doctors and because of lab and because the MRI is less expensive there than the US.
So it would basically make sense to, so it would make sense to do every phase 1 study there at the end of the day and every phase 2 study. When the data is accepted.
Not fully, because then ethnicity will blockade the approval by the regulatory agency.
But sorry to interrupt you, but from my understanding, I still perceive the Western pharma companies, maybe it's different with Chinese pharma companies, but I still perceive the Western pharma companies as having a sweet spot for purchases, for acquiring assets at around clinical phase 2 with safety and efficacy data, regardless of the ethnicity. So it's just show me that it works, show me that it's safe, then I acquire or we sign a license deal and I complete the development. So when I just look at the biotech sector in these early stage developments for the biotechs coming out of universities, research organizations, when they hit the IND stage and have the need then to conduct clinical trials, it's cheaper, the data is accepted, and they can probably reach with the same speed like in Europe or the United States, this crucial phase 2 efficacy and safety data point. And then later push all the studies with different ethnicities and region to the later stages, but have the necessary data to initiate negotiations with pharma. Would that be a valid approach in your eyes, or did I miss something?
Yes, but I would emphasize that the model you described is very valid for phase 1. No doubt, no question about what you said about phase 1. Phase 2 starts to raise some question about the population, the patient population, if I want to move. And phase 2 basically has to get approved by regulatory agencies.
Mhm.
And if you do phase 2 only in China, it will never be acknowledged, and rightfully so. So it needs to be, as I mentioned in my example, an aggregate of Chinese patient phase 2 and US or European. Phase 1, yes. Phase 1, there's no question, generally speaking, there is no question of ethnicity. But phase 2, there is a question.
When I come from the market perspective, when I come from my egocentric finance perspective and say I have to make sure that I can initiate negotiations with pharma very quickly to see if there is an appetite to justify later studies after the first phase 2 data point or first efficacy data point.
Yeah.
How would you set up that with China for a biotech company who says, look, I mean, I have $20 million. I need data. I need data to convince pharma to enter a license deal with me so that we get enough firepower and fuel to continue our development. If that fails, the question is if VCs provide more money. What's your advice to them when they want to look at the China opportunity?
There is no chance to go to China without a local partners. You cannot do. You are the company you described will never be able to do anything in China. You need a Chinese partner, otherwise it doesn't work. Now, what are your options? One option is a distributor, but then all the value creation is not yours; it's his. He will get the assignment from the NMPA and not the company. So some decides to go this way and said, listen, I give aside the potential of the Chinese market, but I want to be there. So here I out-license it to the distributor. He invests the money in the clinical trials. He does it, but he will get also the NMPA approval. The asset will be his. He will pay me royalties. Fine. Option 1. Option 2 is a JV with a Chinese partner, which usually he is the majority. When he is the majority, in some point of time, many of the Western companies are afraid to lose control, to lose the data, and they're afraid to be partnered with the Chinese that has the majority. Our fund model is totally different. We are the Chinese partner. The fund is the Chinese partner. We finance, we create a JV. But here is the big difference. Here is the big difference. The big difference is that you, the European company, you are the majority. We, the Chinese partner, GIBF, the JV, the VC, we are the minority in the Chinese JV. It has major implications. First of all, you, the parent company, the European company, you run the show. We help you. We invest the money in the JV. We help you to recruit a clinical director to do the studies. We have 10 full-timers on the ground. We help you in the process that I will describe shortly, but you are the majority, which means all value creation can be consolidated to the parent European company, which means value creation also to the parent company, to the mother company. It's a big difference, huge difference to the two models that I described earlier, because this model maximizes the potential of the Chinese market. And that's the big difference.
So when we summarize it, the basic need is that European companies can't enter the Chinese market alone. So they need a partner in China to move forward, which is also smart to do, I mean, in other regions of the world. You mentioned 3 options to do these partnerships. One is distributor, collaborator who basically license the technology and does the development by themselves and has full control over the development, but the owner of the original technology and data loses the control. and he hands basically everything over, which is, I think, a valid model for everybody who says, okay, look, I mean, my team has moved on. I don't have a team. I have patents. I have data. It looks promising, but it's not on my strategic landscape anymore, and I can't move it forward. Do you want it? And develop it for China. The second model you mentioned is a JV, and the majority of the JVs in China is basically under Chinese control. So you license the technology and they do the development. You have a higher percentage, a higher stake in the total endeavor. You need to invest money, but it's not under your control, which I don't think for the first tier of technologies and first tier of companies, it's out of question. They want to keep control. When they say it's a promising technology, but wants to harness the advantages of China, want to be ready for the Chinese market, want to have fast clinical trials, and use the data also for registration in Europe and later in the United States.
Right.
And this is where your model comes into place.
Exactly. Now, one exception is that the big pharma, Pfizer, Novartis, and all that, they have Chinese subsidiaries, 100% owned by the pharma company. So they are working in a different model because they are very, very big. But we are talking about a company that has, I don't know, one compound, another 3 compounds in the pipeline, wants to go to China. They have 30, 40 million, 10 employees, data. That's the model we are working. The big ones know how to play in China. Yeah, and by the way, they do conduct many trials in China, the big ones.
Yeah, I believe, when you have enough capital, you can do everything, basically, and create your own subsidiary and hire your own people, which should not be the job for biotech. So they need a partner like you. Can we play the process through? How would that work with European company? Let's assume that, say, European company has raised the Series B. They have 100 million capital on their bank account, and they have 10 compounds that look very promising. Some are in preclinics, some are in phase 2 in Europe already, and they now hear the podcast and say, China looks interesting. I mean, we have a lot of ideas, a lot of potential in the pipeline. We have a lot of more ideas for several different indications, but it's too costly in Europe and it's too slow. Maybe we can work together with you. How would your process with them look like, assuming that the assets are attractive to you?
Okay. We have a very structured process. Just to mention, our first fund started 8 years ago, was $100 and invested in 12 companies in this model. We completed the first fund and since our LPs realized that the model works, they invested another 300 million in the second fund. The second fund is now in action for a year and for almost 2 years. And it's invest only in pharma, only in therapeutics, not in devices. So we have 300 million to invest in this model.
300 million.
300
million. You have a huge war chest to put to work.
And we already invested in 3 companies, and now we are finalizing the 4th company in the second fund. So we have a very structured process of way of working. We start with understanding the science. And then we have analysts, basic science analysts here in Tel Aviv, but also in China, 2 talented genius guys, young guys. They check, first of all, the science to see whether it has some rationale or not. Second thing, we go into clinical indication. They find the right KOL in Guangzhou to discuss the clinical implication. Epidemiology might be different in China. I'll give you an example. Multiple sclerosis. I see many potential drugs for multiple sclerosis, but you come to China and the prevalence is very low. So
Why is that?
I asked many top researchers, and no one understands. Epidemiology-wise, they only can state one thing. If you look at the globus, the more north you go, the higher the prevalence. Okay. That's all they know. Regarding prevalence, they know a lot about the disease. Okay, so the second thing is, like we spoke, matching on the clinical needs, prevalence, epidemiology. So the next thing is that if we think that the science is good, we create a meeting between ourselves, the company, the parent company, and the clinical KOL, which potentially can be a PI. And then we have one or two discussions between them, and we see whether we have a match on the clinical need. We ask him, our Chinese team, we have, as I said, 10 full-timers on the ground. Our Chinese team is basically arguing with him whether it has a clinical relevancy or not. Next move is making an appointment, always Zoom, between the company, the parent company, and our regulatory consultant. What are we facing ahead of us? Numbers of patients and all that. Next move is a CRO. We have our CRO that see the protocol and can start and price the study that we want to do mutually together with the company. And now it is that we need X million. And from this X million, we extrapolate our investment sum. Because the model is that the parent company does not put a penny in the JV. We finance everything, the clinical trial.
Can we stop a little bit here before you continue? Did I understand it right? Creating a JV with you means that the parent company, which in our model is currently a European company, has all the data, has done all the work up to the point where they license it to China with you into a new entity. Your fund finances 100% of the Chinese endeavor and of the studies, and the European parent company has the majority of this JV. Right. And only needs to license the data and everything that's necessary to conduct the trials in China into the JV, but remains in full control of the JV and in full control of the data, and you provide all the capital.
Yes, and to put it shortly, they license it to themselves.
Exactly, yeah.
Because they're majority. They control.
So on the trust side, it means that you put a lot of trust in the JV. And if the parent company has a trust issue and says, okay, if anything goes south, and we don't know you yet, and a lot can happen, but if anything doesn't work, they can pull out everything.
Yeah, it's theirs. They are the majority.
Okay.
And we did it 15 times.
So you have 15 case studies.
12 plus 3. And now comes the 4.
So anybody interested in your model can also talk to 15 other companies.
Yeah, I wouldn't bother all the 15, but yes.
Yeah, but in principle, you have a long list where you can say, okay, call the CEOs, talk with them. They tell you how it works, what's the upside, what's the downside, what's the problems. So there is a lot of social proof.
Yeah, and if we continue with the process, then we understand the numbers. Once our CRO is involved, all of the process is together with the parent company. At this stage, we start to dig into the IP of the company to see that there's no problem. That's our job. The next move is, which I do in 2 weeks from now, on August 11, I go to China together with the company that we invested in. It's a Swiss company, Basel based, that we invested in this model. And after we did all the process that I told you, we tell them, listen, before we start, you go to China to see everything in your eyes. It's not virtual. You come and meet the people. For example, for this company, we are arranging to interview local guy, which will be an employee of the JV. He will be a clinical director. He's a PhD, we know him. He will be the clinical director. He will be responsible for all clinical activities that we will start now. So they interview him. They see our people. They meet our team. They go with us to the hospitals to see where it will be conducted. They meet Chinese FDA people with us. They meet the CRO. So they come for 3 days where they see everything in live.
You mentioned you invest with the parent company in Europe. Do you also take a strategic stake in the parent company? Do you also invest in your JV model? Vice versa, do you say, okay, that you can secure also influence in the decision making? Do you also put money to work in Europe in the company?
Okay.
Or
by our guidelines, we cannot invest in the parent company, but money, and we can show it, money can go for what we decide jointly, can go up to the parent company for, I don't know, certain money can go from China. To put it, we think of ourselves as part of the global effort, because we do 30. You need to raise money for clinical data, right? You raise $100, but if I do 30 patients of the 100, you need to raise only 70. So basically, we take care of 30 or 35 patients out of the 100, and so we are part of the global effort. What we do is 2 things. We have a conversion formula on day one, meaning we don't have equity shares, but if there's an exit on the parent company in 3 years from now, we are out together with them. So the buyer will have 100% of the JV, and we will be out in a formula that we decide on day one when we invest the money. So instead of having, let's say, 40% of the JV and the parent company has 60, just for the illustration, we will have 10% on the parent company when they have an exit. And then the buyer will have our 40% in the JV fully. So that's the way we are part of it. And yes, we are part of the strategic effort. That's the way we see it. And that's why our vector of interest are aligned. And that's why we are ready to move money to the parent company. Yes, money moves to the parent company.
So for example, when you consume the resources during a clinical trial from the parent company, it's like a similar like tech transfer. You make a service agreement and the JV pays then for general services that are necessary to conduct the thing, to not drain the resources of the parent company.
Exactly.
And you also ensure with the investment contract that when the parent company is acquired by a pharma company, that the Chinese JV is part of the overall deal, so that it's not left behind and the parent company just wanders off, is acquired, and then you stand alone with the JV.
We cannot be an obstacle when an exit occurs.
Okay, this makes sense. What are the challenges? I mean, I assume which companies to approach. You assume basically it's clinical stage companies. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense. And I also assume that mostly they want to do multi-center studies across the globe. So with sites in Europe, the United States, and in China, to be ready for market entry and have a very nice and sweet deal for big pharma. Say, okay, we have all the data, we have the approvals from the Chinese government, we have the approval from the European governments, regulatory authorities, and from the US authorities. How are the challenges with such trials?
It's not different from any trials that I know. If you have a good CRO, basically the company does not, from my experience, usually it's a good CRO that manages everything. It's responsible for it.
Okay.
So I don't think it's a major challenge. If you have a good local clinical director, which we have in China, you supervise him from Europe. You supervise him. You talk to him. There's a guy in the parent company which is responsible for all clinical activities. Yes, he will be supervising him on a daily basis. Contact. Will visit China every 3 months. But the guys there are professional. Many of them are highly experienced from European companies, from US companies, came back to China because life is easy there now. They have good salaries.
Chinese cities are more advanced than European ones.
in certain aspects, yes.
Mm.
And there's also another advantage in China. CDMO. You are a company, early stage. You need now to manufacture a compound. Excellent CDMO in China. You can take our money, our investment, and use it for CDMO. It's okay with us. Wuxi, Tigerman, many excellent companies that can do this, that can do the manufacturing of a very high quality, totally accepted by the regulator.
This is so you can do the entire manufacturing for a global clinical trial.
Yes.
In China, and distribute then the compound across the globe to European sites, to US sites.
Sure. And we invested the money in it.
And you funded.
The JV fund. Yes.
Yeah. Which basically funded then 100% by your fund.
Yeah, exactly. That's another major thing. Also, you mentioned earlier about the challenge of a multi-site US, Europe, and so on. All the major players of CRO have active Chinese subsidiary.
Mm-hmm.
Parexel, Novotech, all of them, they have active Chinese subsidiaries. So you are a European company, you created a JV together with me, but you want Parexel to understudy in China. Why? You believe in Parexel. Okay. So Parexel will be.
Mm-hmm. And for companies who don't have a preferred CRO, CDMO, then you can provide the services.
Yeah, we have our learning curve. Believe me.
I believe that, yeah. With 15 cases already under your belt.
Yeah, we started with some of them which, were a disaster. But that's why
this is the advantage working with a global player who understands the ecosystem and has already done the learning curve and went through the learning curve multiple times, who understands the strengths and weaknesses of the players on the market and can select the right players for the right problem. This is a huge advantage.
Yeah. I'll tell you another example from our fund. Our second investment in the second fund is a very interesting company with an antibody for oncology. Now, suddenly, after going to China and starting the activities and all that, they moved one of their pipelines to ADC. And the most developed the most developed knowledge and experience of ADC today is China. Much better than the West.
Oh, really?
In ADC, yeah. Take a look. So suddenly, I came to China, indication X, antibody Y. Mm-hmm. Good. but I'm there. And in another pipeline, I'm starting to work on ADC. But since I'm there anyway, hey, there are excellent companies there. There's an excellent Chinese company which they are signing now with them to give them the linker, which they didn't know in advance. But since they are there, see the linker, they see the Chinese company with this excellent technology of linker. And there are fields whereby Chinese are very good. ADC is an example.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So
Take
when we
ADC market, and you will see prominent Chinese company.
when we look at the process, the process I think is clear that you bring a lot of value to the development. You provide the capital. You leave the majority ownership to the parent company. You support on the Chinese market, have the right network, made every possible mistake already on the market, that you have a vast learning curve and can really be a helpful partner in a Chinese endeavor. What's your sweet spot when you select deals? What are you looking for development stage-wise and indication-wise? What's your sweet spot? When does it make sense to approach you?
I think that if you are facing phase one in the short months to come, yes, we are there. If you are very early, no. If you are, preclinical or what have you, no. But if you are starting to approach clinical stages, phase one, we can take the risk. Phase two, preferably. And indication, yes, we check indication, because indication is, in the example I gave you, it's not only for prevalence later, but it also, like all over the world, it has also reimbursement implications. So if the disease, if the indication is not prevalent, as a general rule, your chances of having reimbursement by the Chinese system is less. So we have to match the clinical indication.
So if you understood you right, you want to have a full Chinese story with a potential market entry in China in case the studies have a positive outcome. You don't want to be solely somebody who finances production, for example, to say, okay, we make a Chinese joint venture. There will never be a Chinese clinical trial, never be a Chinese market entry, because there's just the disease is not prevalent in China. But we can still produce the compounds. So you want to have the full story and not only part of the story.
Yeah. The basic story is clinical activities. That's the guidelines. That's the mandate. If the JV does clinical trial and decides that manufacturing with WuXi is the best thing for the JV, let it be. But the basic idea is the clinical activity.
That makes sense. My question to you is, you set up your fund between Europe, Israel, and China. Are you also open to companies from the United States for this model?
Yes, we are open, but I'm not sure that they are open for this model.
Let's leave the political landscape out of it for the time being. Otherwise, we need another 2 hours.
Exactly, but if I understood correctly, the situation now in the States, they need a special authorization to go to any such model which involves Chinese. And this is interesting because basically we are not in the cap table. If you look at the parent company, we are not in the cap table. China is not in the cap table, but still there is this new authorization which they have to fill in. Yes, we are open to US companies, but I think that according to the situation, they will not run into it because it's too much of barriers on their side, not on my side.
Yeah, I hope it changes. I mean, I'm at least on this podcast, I'm a huge fan of the times from 1990 to 2020, where we talked about global collaboration and the whole world worked together on solving the big challenges that we have as a human society. And I like also this from, I think, one of the Chinese martial artists. I can't recall his name right now. Jackie Chan, I think he always talks about this one family concept. And I'm a huge fan of that, and I hope also that politics one day will resemble that thought of a united world.
Hopefully, yeah, we are looking into it. Yes.
When we look at the fund creation, I'm sorry to interrupt a little bit. I see that we are already after 2 hours. How much time do you have? But I really enjoy talking to you, and I have some questions left. But I would like to ask you, how much time do you have left?
Whatever is needed to talk about the fund.
Okay, then we can talk until 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. my time zone.
Let's make it efficient.
So let's say another 10, 15 minutes probably to go for this one. What I would be interested in learning from you is you are the chief medical officer of the fund. You're located in Israel. What were the challenges of creating such a fund in China and acquiring and collecting capital?
Okay. To put it mildly, raising the capital was done by our chairman. Our chairman is Dr. Shuki Gleitman, which is the only foreigner to be an honorary citizen of the city of Guangzhou. But as we started the discussion, he was the father of the incubation system in Israel in 1999. He is big name. He is a special World Bank consultant on innovation. And basically he raised the money. And the idea was that they wanted innovation to come to China. But they understand that if they invest in the parent company, it will not be in China. So they said, listen, he created the model. With all due respect to me, he created the model. And he said, we'll do clinical activities in China, which is the beginning of creation of ecosystem. They are interested, the Chinese are interested in the ecosystem. By the way, the company, just another important feature, the JV does not touch at all IP. No way. It's only license. So IP stays only with the parent company, only. So he said, we'll bring Chinese company on the European companies on this model, and we will do the job. We, the professional, we are 3 partners. We will do the job. We are 4 partners, doesn't matter. 1 is Chinese. And we will do the job. We will do a professional job of investment, of selection, of all what we talked. And the companies will come to Guangzhou, and in this way will stimulate the ecosystem and also make money. So it took us 2 years took him 2 years of negotiation while I was working at Sheba, and that's the model. The model is to bring innovation without frightening the foreigners, because many foreigners are afraid, that there will be whatever name you choose with their IP. There's such a fear, but here we don't touch the IP. And it's a win-win. And that was something that made the breakthrough.
While you were talking, I had one thought or one question popping up. When the JV in China does also part of the production of the compounds necessary, and often there is some new ideas, some new inventions in that area. Also in clinical phase 2 trials, there might be something that's worth patenting. What about these ideas when they happen in China? How do you handle novel IP?
It's in practical terms, it's a non-issue. Listen, at Sheba we do 3,000 human trials a year. 3,000.
Mm.
And I've never encountered an IP coming from phase 2. So,
Okay, so
it's it's not an issue. I don't think it's an issue. And manufacturing is not our main objective.
mm.
It's only if the company decides to do manufacturing and okay, let it be. But then they are the majority.
Mm. So basically, in the rare events that some at later stage development that some new IP would be discovered, it would also be under control of the parent company at the end of
Yeah.
the day.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned incubation in China, incubation models in China. How does it look like in China? Is it the same like in Israel, Israel
No,
1999, or is it different?
it's very different. In China, incubation system is more like, to put it extreme, sorry for that, it's more like a real estate one.
Mhm.
Building, renting, and so on. We created an incubator in Guangzhou that is one incubator like this that is very similar to Israeli model, and we have Chinese and German and Israeli early stage companies there. But this is not the main topic of the fund. It's another arm of early stage incubator. But the main arm is what we discussed, the investment arm.
Okay, so really your focus is getting
Yes.
companies in clinical stages who are interested in expanding their scope towards China. You are the expert there. You can help them understand the market, identify the market opportunity, assess the market opportunity, set up clinical trials, help setting up productions in China, deliver the data at the end of the day, and also are helpful when it comes to exit discussions. I can also assume that probably Chinese pharma companies might be valid exit partners in the future. You can also accelerate and utilize these processes.
Yes, and this is an interesting point. We believe that in the future, exit strategy via an M&A by a Chinese pharma company becomes more and more and more realistic.
What are the target? I mean, when we look at the next 5 to 10 years with your fund, and you had to look in the crystal ball and come up with some ideas about what the target areas of Chinese pharma companies will be in the next 5 to 10 years, how would it look like?
Like the rest of the world, it will be oncology oriented, very much oncology oriented. There is a specific objective in China, which they, in a way, raised it up in the list of reimbursement, which is women diseases.
Mhm.
They are now giving a lot of focus on women's disease. So this, in many parts, will be part of it. And I think obesity and diabetes as part of the Western lifestyle is becoming more and more of a challenge there, like all over the rest of the world. I think that this is usually the main issues, like the rest of the world, beside women health, which is more specific to China. And also they are trying to dive more and more into genetic diseases.
Mhm.
This is the focus in the next 5 to 10 years, I think.
So if I would try to simplify it, for me, it sounds to me like it's pretty much the same strategic landscape like in the Western world, more or less.
More or less, yes.
More or less. So,
Although there are changes in prevalence, we say oncology, but if you look at leukemia, there are different subtypes of leukemia,
mhm.
which are much, much, much less prevalent in China as opposed to other places. So there are differences in the prevalence, as we mentioned before, but basically the direction is what I mentioned.
Okay, that sounds great. Shlomo, it's really great talking to you, and I could go on for another 2 or 3 hours. You are such a valuable source of information and have so much experience. I have 2 questions left. Before I ask these 2 questions, to to not hold you up any longer. Is there anything you would like to address at the end of the podcast that I haven't tackled yet with my questions?
No, I think that we covered everything, especially on the tech transfers we talked, and on the opportunity of European companies in China. And I want to thank you for the opportunity.
It's great. It's great having you on the show, but let me finalize with the last two questions.
Sure, go ahead.
We are coming close to 2.5 hours, and when someone looks at the podcast and says, "Oh my God, these guys were talking 2.5 hours," and I want to listen to everything.
Yeah.
So when in the description of the podcast, when I make the last point in the table of contents, a TLDR, too lazy to listen to everything. Here is the summary. What key message would you like the listeners of the podcast to take away from this conversation?
One is managing innovation from research to applicable products, tech transfer in university and hospitals. I think that we covered it very intensively, and I'm happy for that. Second will be a unique model of investment and exploiting the Chinese healthcare market. These are the two topics which I think should be emphasized.
Yeah, I will do that. And the last question then, when a biotech investor or entrepreneur is inspired and thinks, okay, let's look into the Chinese opportunity, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
I think the best way will be via email of the fund. Shlomo Strudel, GIBF, Central Bar, bio.com.
Okay, then we'll add this also to the description.
That will be the best.
Are you also active on LinkedIn? I learned that some people.
I have my profile there. But tell you the truth, I'm not that much active there now. But I have my profile and I have my mail. Yes, but I'm not too active. That's why I think that the best way is mail.
Super. Then I will recommend that anybody who asks me, and also in the description, that if you're interested in evaluating the Chinese opportunity, reach out to Shlomo. He understands the market. He has a fund. He has 300 million ready to invest in new endeavor. It's not fully allocated yet, so there is enough room. China is interesting and might also be becoming in the next 5 to 10 years one of the big exit opportunities for European biotechs.
I'm sure about that.
Super. Shlomo, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for being guest on my show. I enjoyed every single minute of our conversation. And let's catch up in a couple of months and see what came out of this podcast and how China evolved.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Likewise, I enjoyed it. It was very, very nice and productive show, and I really thank you.
Thank you, Shlomo. I wish you a great rest of the week, and let's catch up soon.
Yeah, let's do it. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye-bye. We have journeyed through the heart of healthcare innovation, uncovering the pivotal insights that drive real impact globally. Today, Shlomo Noy gave us a rare look into the mechanics of creating value in biotech. From Israel's trailblazing innovation ecosystem to China's vast, untapped market. We explored strategies to incentivize researchers, balance clinical and financial insight, and the importance of securing control while navigating global partnerships. If these insights resonated, please remember to like, comment, and share this episode. Your engagement helps us bring more top-tier guests like Shlomo and deliver even greater value entirely free to you.